Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to HPANWO TV. Welcome to this, another watch and read party. Yeah, I did think it was actually time for me to do another of these sort of watch parties, or usually sometimes watch parties. In this case, watch and read. I've done 2 watch-read parties so far that were very successful. I want to do another one. And the reason is because I put a little community notice post the other day talking about the film Dune and about how I'd reviewed the Dennis Villeneuve adaptation of the Dune, which actually turned out they didn't actually say it in the actual. They didn't say it until after you'd watched it. It turns out it was only like the part. It was part 1 of 2. He's going to go back. Villeneuve's going to go back and do another shaggy dog story about the second half of the epic novel. But as I said at the time, I didn't think that was a very good film, really. I mean, it was okay as a standalone movie. It had its good sides, as I explained in the video I made about this subject, the review. But generally speaking, it's substandard compared to another film, which I want to. And when I say watch, read, party, the watch part is definitely this other film. Oh, by the way, do you like my T-shirt? Best hospital porter ever. That was a birthday present from a very dear friend of mine. So thank you very much to that person. They know who they are. They can own up if they want. So yes, this watch read party, I don't want to make this clear because so there's no confusion. The read part is obviously the novel by Frank Herbert, but the watch party is the 1984 Dune novel. The Dune film adaptation of the novel by David Lynch. Now, as you know, I've mentioned David Lynch. He comes up a few times. I think he's generally very good. You may have seen my article on HPANWO Voice about Twin Peaks, which I watched long after it came out. It came out, I think, in about 1990, and I remember my friends were all watching it, thinking it was really good. So you got to watch this, Ben. You got to watch Twin Peaks, and I never did. But I have watched it. A friend of mine lent me the DVD box set, and I binge watched the 2 original series. But and I was very impressed with it. I mean, I'm not going to go into detail about Twin Peaks on this particular video. It's outside the scope of this particular video, but it is basically it's a TV series by David Lynch, and I think it's very, very good indeed. Now, the whole issue, I watched another. I recently watched another David Lynch film as well called Inland Empire. It was actually his last film. I think he kind of retired after that. This was in 2005, and since then he's done a few interviews, but he's pretty old now. And I don't think he wants to carry on filmmaking. I think he wants to retire and be with his family. I suppose it's understandable, like we all do at a certain age. More dragon juice. But basically, there's this background to this, which is what these introductions are all about. Is that the book came out in 1965, and I read it. Not then. That's before my time. I'm not that old. But it came out in 1965, and it was originally actually a serial in Analog magazine. Now I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember this. I'm not really old enough myself, but there was a time, believe it or not, where people got their entertainment from like things on paper, not just books specifically. Magazines were in the pre-television age. Magazines were very, very popular. Magazines and radio plays as well, because people didn't have TV. But there were a whole array of literary magazines, for including short stories and serials of various kinds. And there was a whole array of magazines for science fiction. There was like amazing stories and things like that. And this one was called Analog Magazine, was one of the most popular. And the Dune novel was actually serialized in there before it actually came out as a book. In the early 60s, it was in several editions throughout the early 60s. And then Herbert turned it into a book, and it's really an epic book, actually. Now it's really, I mean, when I read the book, what happened was I have this is a bit of a strange situation for a watch-read party, because I can't hold you up the DVD sets and the book itself, which I normally do, a paperback copy of the book, because I haven't got them. Well, I might I might have a copy. I don't think I've got a copy of Dune on me. It may be somewhere. I mean, it may be my dad still got it. I don't know. But you see, I actually read the book. I watched the film, the David Lynch film, when it came out when I was a kid, and I loved it. And I went and read the book. And so I did those two things basically when I was pretty young, when I was a teenager, and since then I have not watched or read it at all. And so I will. So this is kind of like it's almost like I'm kind of approaching this new in a way, because this watch read party, because of course I'm going to have to reread the book and rewatch the film. So it's interesting. It's an interesting sort of thing. So it's a bit different from the other watch read parties I've done, because with Inferno, you know, I hadn't actually watched the film when I suggested the watch party. With What Dreams May Come, I actually had watched the film and not read the book. So this is going to be quite something a bit new. Sort of a reread of something which I read so long ago. It's slightly, it's almost like I'm approaching it from new. Now, the book was published by the Chiltern Company, and that was its first edition. And when my first impressions of it when I first read it, I'm going back into. I mean, I'll say more about this in the review, but it had a slightly sort of, it was very Star Wars like. And I mean, I know Gary may disagree. Gary Robinson I think he disagrees with me on this, but I think this wasn't this. I heard something that this was inspiration for George Lucas and Star Wars. It has this mystical element which Star Wars has, which is actually you don't find in regular science fiction. I mean, it's more of a space opera than science fiction, although it has a lot of science fiction elements to it. You know, there is technology in this particular story, although it has a slightly steampunky feel to it. And the film especially is very steampunk. And I think this is deliberate, because I think this might be deliberate simply because it has an epic scope. It includes an entire universe, like Star Wars. There's an entire universe and history and geography, and you know, and there's a gazetteer of the various worlds in this universe, which is set in the future. It's set in the distant future, 10,000 AD or something, and where the human species has basically colonized the galaxy, has gone into space and colonized the galaxy, to the point where the individual colonies have become worlds of their own, with their own politics, their own history, and in many ways, firstly the technology is quite steampunky, and there's a reason, for that. For example, they still fight with swords and knives and poison darts and poison spikes and things like that. There are sort of like directed energy guns, like the kind of phasers or laser guns. They're called las guns, but they're not used very much because people have this body armor. This kind of electrical body armor that they can like switch on, and it protects them. As a result, I think that might be a plot device simply to bring back the kind of sword and lance and the shield kind of fights of the old sword and sorcery fantasy. And it has an element of that in it. It has that. It's like Star Wars. It has that sword and sorcery fantasy feel to it. And there's also a reason. There's a reason why. And there's a new book actually just been released about this, like a prequel. It's just been released, I think, by Frank Herbert's son. Frank Herbert, the author, had a son who's also written some prequels and sequels. What happened in the past was that humans had very, very sophisticated electronics to the point where they developed what we call general artificial intelligence, or artificial general intelligence, whatever it is, which I've discussed on other videos. But this became intelligence to the point where, as a common theme of science fiction, common plot of a science fiction story, it tried to take over. It tried to take over and made humans its slaves, and the humans fought back in what they called the Butlerian Jihad. And they destroyed all sophisticated electronics, which is why in the book, and indeed in the film adaptations by both Lynch and Villeneuve, there were almost no electronics at all in the Lynch version, and in Villeneuve it's just very simple electronic analog dials on the ornithopters and things like that. So yeah, the ornithopters are the aircraft which have a particular kind of form of lift. It's like a helicopter, but it has like the rotors go in a different way. They're very well done actually in the Villeneuve film, I must say. So this is like an Arthur. It's also been compared to the Arthurian legends. It's a kind of messianic hero's journey type story. I mean, the main character, Paul Atreides, essentially is the Messiah. He doesn't know it to begin with, but he has to undergo this hero's journey, a bit like Luke Skywalker. It's also, I'd say, it's an apocalyptic story, and this is why it's very, again, I find this sort of thing very interesting, apocalyptic themes. And indeed, I've done an entire video, which I'm very proud of, called Apocalypse Soon. And it was also the feature of my last talk at Truth Seekers Northeast. In 1966, this book was nominated for the Hugo Award, and it won. It tied with a book called This Immortal by Roger Zelazny. I've never heard of him. Never heard of him in my life. Who is he? But anyway, J.R. Tolkien didn't like it. He said he disliked it with some intensity and felt it would be unfair to Herbert, another working author, if he gave an honest review of the book. Oh, well, he's a very kind man, you know. I mean, some people, if they dislike a book, they just say so. But yeah, he didn't like it at all. He really didn't like it. It's really, really classic. I mean, if you have a first edition of Dune by the Chiltern Company, you can sell it for £10,000 at an auction. They're they're especially if they're in good condition. Yeah, and it's this was a company that apparently had only been publishing automobile repair manuals. And of course, Dune has been very influential. And it's sometimes when you read it, you realize you've read other books in the past which were written after it, which you realize are kind of like Dune. Apparently, it's influenced Star Trek. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure, but maybe I'm not enough of a Trekkie. But I don't really think Star Trek and Dune have much in common. Like with as I've said before about Star Trek and Star Wars, they're two very, very different things. Star Trek is hard science fiction. It's spaceships, phasers, teleporters, things like that. Dune is at best soft science fiction, and also I'd say space opera fantasy type story with science fiction, futuristic space opera fantasy. We start with science fiction elements like Star Wars. Although Star Wars is not futuristic. It's just completely alien. It's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away with no connection to the Earth. In Dune, there is a reference to the Earth as the source of humanity, but it was thousands of years previously in the present era. Now, on the subject of the film, there have been many attempts to develop this film. Many indeed. It seems like it's kind of got stuck in development hell. There were a number of stalled attempts. There was someone called Arthur P. Jacobs who, in the early 70s, in 1971, he optioned the rights to the novel from Frank Herbert, and these rights only lasted 9 years, though. He said it's basically a 9-year lease, but then he died the following year. So they thought that David Lean could do it. David Lean, the famous British film director. Then there was an attempt by a French director called Alejandro Jodorowsky. Doesn't sound very French. And he had this idea of having, he had all kinds of idea. Let's have a look. He said that Orson Welles would be in it as Vladimir Harkonnen. That might work, actually. Mick Jagger was going to be Phaedra Arthur, which I suppose I'd have liked because he's a hospital porter. David Carradine as Duke Atreides. And he wanted to cast, Jodorowsky wanted to cast his own son as Paul. And they wanted Pink Floyd were going to compose the music. I mean, that would have been, I wonder what that would have been like, actually, because that sounds like it would have been quite an interesting film, but it was never produced. It was cancelled. It was scrapped in pre-production. unfortunately. But they did. The guy, the special effects guy, a guy called Dan O'Bannon, did work with Lynch on his adaptation. This continued into 1976 when there was an attempt by an Italian producer called Dino De Laurentiis, quite famous, I think he is, to turn it into a script and eventually a film. And then Lynch came into it in 1981 because he started working with Laurentiis, and because this was basically Lynch had just done The Elephant Man, which I don't know if you've seen that. I could do an entire review of the film The Elephant Man, which is based on a true story and has it's a very sad true story about a man with a gross malformity in 19th century London, and but it has some fiction elements to add it to make it more exciting, and it includes a portrayal of a hospital porter played by Michael Elphick as a pretty nasty character. One of the porters at the hospital where Merrick, the Elephant Man, is being looked after, has some horrible ideas about what to do with him. But that's kind of going off topic a bit. Anyway, De Laurentiis decided eventually that David Lynch would direct the film. And funnily enough, Lynch turned down the offer to direct Return of the Jedi. God. Which one? I mean, George Lucas did actually get a different director to do. I remember to do Empire Strikes Back. I remember. I'm sure Gary will have a lot to do. Will have a lot to say about this part of the video. And the idea was it was going to be a Star Wars for grown-ups, which is interesting because I think Star Wars is a very grown-up thing anyway. So the film was made successfully after like so many attempts that had just floundered, and in 1984 it was released. The rough cut was over 4 hours, but Lynch intended to cut the film. On the seventh and final draft of the script, it was almost 3 hours long. Now, Universal and the film's financiers expected a standard 2-hour cut of the film, and Dino De Laurentiis and his daughter Raffaella, who'd taken over as his assistant, and Lynch, they excised films to try and make it a 2-hour job. They filmed new scenes that simplified or concentrated plot elements and added a voiceover narration and a new introduction by Virginia Madsen, who played the princess. Because I mean, in the book, what's her name? The princess, the imperial princess, because I can't remember the name of the character now. Princess Irulan. In the book, she introduces each chapter with a passage from her own books. These are books within books, sort of thing, a story within a story kind of thing, and which I think always makes stories more interesting. And she has this thing called My Father's House, which is like an autobiography, and there's all little bits in it. It gives it more of authenticity. I think makes it feel more real. Like I do that in my own stories. Like there was Empire Reborn, Eyewitness on Rockall. It's a book that doesn't exist, but it was one of the characters in my novel. Rockall wrote it. If you want to read Rockall, by the way, it's for free. You can read it for free, and it's on. You can read it for free on Ben's Bookcase. So she was brought in. So the actress Virginia Madsen, I think she was in Twin Peaks? I mean, there's a lot of, as I said, he reuses actors all the time, Lynch. He had Carl MacLachlan playing the main character. Like in Twin Peaks came afterwards, though. Twin Peaks came a few years later. But there were several others. Who you might recognize if you're a regular viewer of his. Jose Ferrer was in it as well. He plays the nasty FBI agent in Twin Peaks. Well, interesting about talking about the cast. At least one of the cast members has turned into a woo-woo and is now on our side, and that is Mary Sean Young, who plays Chani. She's actually now become an out-there person who believes in the sort of things we believe in. You may have seen her interviews on outlets like Red Ice Radio. She was on with Alex Jones, a couple of others. So, well done her. I don't know if being in this film had anything to do with it. If it had, then that's something we can discuss with the review and live stream, I think, in those videos. And so yeah, so basically, this introduction by Princess Irulan was actually included in, and the narration was included in the film. Yeah, there was a 186-minute television version. Oh man. And they had like a longer description with concept art. There were several different versions of this film. I'm going to make sure I get hold of the original. Several longer versions have been spliced together from two other versions. There's a 178-minute fan edit apparently. There's a Blu-ray box set which has several different versions as well. And Universal approached Lynch for a possible director's cut, but Lynch declined every offer, and he preferred not to discuss Dune in interviews. And this is interesting because he has actually kind of disowned this film. But he says here in 2022, during an interview about the remaster of his film Inland Empire, I think that's the interview I might have seen because he's pretty old now. He admitted to the surprised interviewer that he was interested in the idea of a director's cut for Dune. He offered the caveat that he did not believe it would ever happen, nor that anything in the unused footage would satisfy him enough for a director's cut, as he felt he was selling out during production. Nevertheless, he felt enough time had passed that he was at least curious to take another look at the footage. Right. Sometimes if you look at something with fresh eyes, it's a different thing. But I know there was I know that he kind of disowned this film. He actually said at one point that he said he wanted nothing more to do with it. He in fact in one of the early versions of the film, he's not in the credits. There's a pseudonym for the director. Let me just find the details. So why David Lynch disowned Dune? Yes, is here. David Lynch disowned Dune after its first negative reception, but he was wrong to do so, as Dune is visibly appealing and a surreal accomplishment. All right. A feeling that the movie was a failure, Lynch distanced himself from it and famously refused to be involved with re-releases. Despite the director's disdain for his work, Dune should not be viewed as a failure, and Lynch was wrong to disown it. I see, right, I didn't know that. I thought that he may have disowned it for personal reasons, just decided he didn't want anything to do with it because he didn't like the way it was edited. Now, as you just heard as I've just explained to you, I've been reading from the Wikipedia article and another article I found. He was very much involved with the editing process. So David Lynch was one of the editors as well. And now it's not unusual for a writer or a filmmaker to turn against their own work. Virgil, the famous Roman poet, well, on his deathbed, he said to his friends, "Please just destroy all my work. Every copy of my poems, just throw them away, burn them." And his friends didn't do it, which is probably just as well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have those poems today. There's many other examples. I know that one of the authors of the book of V for Vendetta refused to allow their name to be put on the credits of the film by the Wachowskis. They were the Wachowski brothers. I don't know. I think they're the Wachowski sisters now. So yeah, Lynch, I thought, may have just not liked it. He may have just thought it was a bad edit or something. Decided he didn't want it. It wasn't the way he wanted it. But apparently that's not the case. He was just upset by its commercial failure because it was a box office bomb. Just going back to my notes here. It grossed 30.9 million, but it had a 40 to 42 million pound budget. At least 4 versions have been released worldwide. Lynch largely disowned the finished film and had his name removed from various cuts or went under pseudonyms. The film has developed a cult following, but opinions vary between fans of the novel and fans of Lynch's films. Yeah. Now, I personally think it's very good. I think it's a very, very good film. I really, really liked it. And I know it is not popular with many people, filmmakers, science fiction fans, etc. don't like it. I think the film is very good. The book I remember enjoying as well, because I read the book straight after watching the film, and I've not read, like I say, I've not watched or read them since. So I'm going to have to get a hold of the DVD, and I have to, because I will get a DVD. I'm streaming it. I will get the DVD. Make sure I get the original one, and one that won't be edited or removed, as online streaming platforms can do. And of course, I'll get a copy of the book. If I can't find my original copy, which maybe my dad's got it, I don't know. Or maybe it's at my brother's house. I'm not sure. Maybe I left it at the house I used to live in when I was a kid. I don't know. Have to see. I don't know. But in which case it'll be gone. I don't even know who lives there now, actually. If not, I'll just buy another copy. I'll just buy another cheap paperback copy. And of course, because this is a watch-read party, you know the rules by now, probably. If you're new to this channel, then what I suggest you do. It's very, very simple. What I'll do is I'll leave a gap. Like I say, it won't be, because this is a watch and read party. I will leave it longer than I do just the watch parties, because we do have a book to read. So as with the previous 2 watch-read parties, I'll leave it a few months. So sometime next year I'll do review and live stream of Dune the book and Dune the film, and by then hopefully you yourself, the viewer, will have watched and read both. Although I found actually that with the last watch read party, most people have not read the books. I mean, certainly with What Dreams May Come, nobody actually read the book, and with Inferno, only a couple of you read the book. But you all went and watched the film, so that's okay. It's up to you if you want to do that. That's absolutely fine. I'll leave it up to you, the viewer, to decide. But as long as you get the right film, not Villeneuve's new film, because I mean, that's the part 2 is being released in March, and I will not be watching it. This is specifically the David Lynch 1984 adaptation we're talking about here, and it has like I said, it has the typical Lynch cast. It has like Miguel Ferrer, it has Carl McLachlan. Has a couple of other people you'll recognise from other films in his repertoire. And it has, I thought Vladimir Harkonnen was very good, actually. I'll say more during the review. I'll say more about that during the review. But I thought there's a lot of good performances in it, actually. And some of the characters are very well brought to life. So, yeah, even though we didn't have Mick Jagger, the hospital porter, but never mind. Never mind. Okay, guys, so that's it. Now, your job now is to go away, read the book, watch the movie, the David Lynch one, and then we will reconvene at a later date and do a review and live stream. Now, what I'll do is all you need to do is keep watching this proverbial space, meaning the HPANWO TV blog, and of course my channel. I'll put the review up, and then maybe a week or so after the review, we'll have the live stream. Okay, but I do recommend, obviously, book and film, read them, watch them before you watch the review. Okay, so that's your instructions on how to take part in this watch-read party for Dune, the book and the film. All right, so that's it. Now, what's coming up? I've got some interesting new videos coming up, which I hope will interest you anyway. As I'm recording this, I'm actually going away tomorrow to do a talk for East Anglia UFO Group, which I'll be filming. So that'll be uploaded at some point. I'm also going to pay a visit to the Welsh Parliament, the Senedd Cymru. So I thought I don't know if I'll be film. I won't be film inside it, but I'll be able to show you the outside and tell you what I think of it. I'm also going to a conference called Stairway to the Stars, and it's a big one in Las Vegas. So I'm doing exactly what Gareth suggested I do, God rest him. So it's a tribute to Gareth. And of course, next month it is the 60th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. So we'll be doing a special video about that. So lots of interesting things coming up on HPANWO TV, plus lots more, plus other live streams, plus updates, plus comments, reply videos, etc. So with that being said, thank you all of you for watching HPANWO TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.